Welcome to True You Ministries with pastoral counselor Stacy Echeverria. Stacy is a licensed pastoral counselor whose own journey has taught her the importance of having a safe place to discuss the harder issues of life. We are grateful that you've joined us for this week's broadcast. You can learn more about Stacy and her heartfelt desire to help people, much like yourself, who may be at a place of pain and confusion by calling her at 626-461-3344. That's 626-461-3344. Or feel free to email her at info@trueyouministries.com. And now, here's Stacy. All right, welcome to True You Ministries. And today's show is called Midlife Losses for Women. And joining me in studio is Jennifer Strohecker from Crooked Barryl Coaching. So she coaches women in midlife and believes that successful doesn't have to be stressful. I really like that. So let me say that again. Successful doesn't have to be stressful. Her passion is helping midlife women rediscover themselves after difficult life transitions. She guides them through overwhelm and empowers them to come out of tough times as stronger, more resilient women. Together, they work to shift their mindset, build strong habits to achieve new goals, and give them the tools needed to reduce stress, anxiety, and fear. Jennifer encourages, excuse me, Jennifer encourages them to lean into their resilience, be confident in who they are, and go after what they want in the second half of life. Welcome, Jennifer. It's really wonderful having you on the show today.
Thank you, Stacy. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah. Well, let's just dive in. All right, let's dive into a personal story introducing the pain of the show. I know for me, when I hit 40, I was actually really excited about being in my 40s because I felt like I was coming into my own and I knew who I was. What I didn't expect or understand was all the changes that would be happening with me as I hit 40. And now I'm at the tail end of my 50s, going into my 60s. And there has been no one really that I could talk with. I mean, women were talking amongst themselves, but we didn't quite know how to navigate all the different things that we were experiencing. And so in so many instances, especially speaking with doctors about the different bodily changes that were going on, I always felt like I was losing my mind and I didn't understand all that was going on. So I really didn't feel like I had any help. Well, I'm grateful that there's someone like you out there who is able to help women that are experiencing all kinds of losses in midlife. Would love to hear a little bit about your own story.
Absolutely. Well, I was one of those women experiencing a loss. I was a teacher for 25 years in a private school, loved it. And around 50, I started thinking, I don't know if I can do this anymore, but I had no idea what was going to be next. So I didn't, like everything else, I didn't do anything about it.
Mhm.
And one day we had a staff meeting and it was announced that school was going to be closing. Enrollment was down and it was just too costly to keep it open. And I looked around at my 50 something friends and went, "Hey, are you going to start that cake business you talked about? Because we all need something to do." And it was very scary, when you do something for that long. Um, you don't ever really think hard and deep about what if I can't do this anymore. I knew at that point I didn't want
Right.
to go to another school system. So there I was, out of a job, out of routine. It wasn't hard at first because summers were always off. We were traveling and had lots of fun. But come August, when I was ready to get ready to go back to school again, I realized that's not happening. And I had to
Mhm.
really do some work and find my way.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I've been through so many different careers. I'm in my 3rd career right now, and my 3rd career started in my 50s, even going back to school and even, being in my 50s, it was like, is that even realistic for me to go back to school? Do I want to go back to school? Because I had been in college, at 18 and that was so long ago and it was just like, oh my gosh, thinking about, well, does that make sense for me? Well, there was another plan that came about with all of that, and I think what I'm learning now is that you're never too old. If you have the desire, then move ahead and do it. But yeah, there's just a lot that goes on for women in midlife. And for those of you that would be interested in contacting Jennifer, she can be reached at 610-854-9977 or email at crooked barrel barryl coaching @gmail.com. Jennifer also offers a free 30-minute consultation. So you can't go wrong with at least setting up a consultation with Jennifer to find out whether or not what she offers is what you're looking for. I offer consultations as well. It's a great opportunity for both the coach and the prospective client to determine whether or not this would be a good fit. So you don't lose anything, but there's a lot of gain in this. So make sure you reach out to Jennifer for that free 30-minute consultation. So now, we've introduced the pain of the show, and I normally like to leave our listeners and viewers with some hope of scripture and God's wisdom. And there were two that resonated for me, and that is in Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And Job 8:21. God will yet fill your mouth with laughter. I love that one because as we get older, we're looking back on what life was like when we were younger, and there's a lot that we may have gone through, and maybe there's not a lot of laughter in our lives as we get older, but at any stage of life, there's a lot that we can be grateful for and find laughter in the struggles as well. So I want to move into the next part of our show here and the teaching and the counseling aspects. And so I have a question for you, Jennifer, and that is, what do you say to a woman who comes to you and says, I just don't know who I am anymore?
Very common question. And as I said, one that I asked myself. Um,
Hmm.
it's a loaded question with many answers. And I usually start out with, who do you want to be?
Mm,
Many times the answer comes back, I don't know. And
right.
so that's where the work comes in. And
Hmm.
we have to really dig deep and find out, excuse me one second. So sorry. After your children go off to school and you're no longer doing all those mom duties and you have all this time on your
Right.
hands, who are you? What do you
Right.
want to do?
Right. Right.
So sometimes it's finding hobbies, finding activities, finding a new circle of friends. A lot of women
Hmm.
find themselves without friends at this time of life because their friends may have revolved around their children's activities, and those were the people they hung out with for the last 15 years or so. A lot of
Hmm.
women are also in flux with their relationships, deciding whether they want to stay in that relationship. Is it still working? And
Hmm.
a lot of women find themselves caregivers for aging parents, some with children still in the home, some without.
Right.
So we have to
Right.
take into account everything and look at things that bring them joy, look at things that they enjoy doing. What have they been putting
Hmm.
off all of this time because they were
Right.
focused on their kids? And,
Right.
what can you do to kind of facilitate that hobby or that interest?
Mhm, mhm. So what I'm hearing is that we're talking about a loss of identity. So who they are is wrapped up in
Mhm.
if they're married, right? Their husband, and if they have children, their identity is wrapped up in their children. And I would venture a guess that some women may have put off their education their further education because they got married, and got married young, and they started a family really young, and they're thinking, well, I can get to that later, and then later never comes. And then they wonder, did I miss out? Did I miss out
Sure.
and on all who I could be, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
So,
advantage in today's world is technology because for those
mhm.
women that wanna do that, they can go ahead.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can pursue
Right.
it.
Yeah, they can. I know for me, when I went back to school in my early 50s, I did it all online. I didn't have to physically go to a school and do that. So that was so convenient for me. And I was still working full time as well. I don't have children, so I didn't have that aspect. So that made it a lot easier for me to be able to go back to school. So there are women who maybe they're retired, or as you mentioned, they've experienced a job loss, or they're empty nesters. Are some of the women that you work with, or maybe you haven't worked with them yet, she may be a widow, and so she may be experiencing maybe some financial instability, and maybe even dating, navigating the dating arena. Do you have any experience with women who have been going through something like that?
I have, and it's, a lot of unlearning and a lot of old beliefs trapped in there, as you had mentioned earlier. Is it too late? I'm too old for that? And the answer definitely is no, but it
Mhm.
takes an awful lot to, especially in a case of a widow, there's so much grieving that has to be done, there's so much change happening, and
Right.
so in time, yes, they can build another relationship and they can have something similar to what they had earlier in life. Financial struggles are difficult because lose. I think we were talking about the financial instability. So if they lose a spouse young, they're definitely not prepared financially
Mhm.
for that and to be on their own.
Mhm.
So it is a lot of back and forth and a lot of work to find middle ground for them so they know that they can have secure financial stability until whenever, until they pass.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned something about grieving. So whether it is the being retired, or there's an experience with a job loss, or being an empty nester, and even being a widow, um, there is grief that accompanies these losses. And so how much, and I know you're not a grief coach, but how much of the grief do you address, in your coaching with these women?
That's a great question, and I would definitely say it varies with each person because everyone handles it
Mhm.
differently. I have
Right.
had a situation where I worked with someone who worked in tandem with me and with a grief counselor, because she
Mhm.
really needed to get rid of some depression symptoms and work through the grief. But at the same time, she also wanted to move forward and work towards, a different life than what she'd had in the past. And just getting the motivation to do that was a little tough.
Yeah. 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 And then you also work with women that are divorced, and they tend to also experience some of the similar things as maybe a woman who is a widow. And that is, again, that financial stability, and again, navigating the dating arena. And then you had also mentioned aging parents. Uh, this is something that I experienced myself, and there really wasn't anyone out there that I could even talk with about what is the first thing that I need to know about this when there's an aging parent that maybe is diagnosed with a terminal illness, or my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's and dementia, and that was really difficult. So that was a grief period of 2 years, right? So every day, a little bit more of himself we were losing. And that was just a I'm so grateful that it didn't drag on for 10, 20 years. I'm grateful that it, was a short period of time, but it was still really difficult. And I think what was so hard about that too was I live in California, so dealing with Medicare and trying to get my dad, some funding to so we could put him into a facility, and there is just such a lack of compassion in that too. I'm sure with some of the women that you're working with, depending on the services that they might be needing outside of what you're providing them, where we have a system that doesn't have compassion for what people may be going through. So, me in my midlife, dealing with aging parents and trying to get them the care that they needed. And I'm dealing with a system where people just don't really care. Now, I'm generalizing. I'm sure there are people that are working in these service industries that do care, but unfortunately, that was not my experience, and so it was so layered, the grief that I was experiencing around my dad, and then how I had to be an advocate for him as well with the Veterans Administration and Medicare, trying to get my dad the services that he needed. And it just compounded the grief and it made me feel really angry. And that was internal. I didn't, project that outward. But I don't think that this is something that we're really having conversations around either.
I agree. It was very difficult dealing with my in-laws. I ran into a lot of the same roadblocks that you do. And then also too, unless you have legal documents, they're okay, but they can't. And the one thing that drove me madly insane was that trying to get a human being on the phone. You're talking to
Yeah,
automated systems, and then you get somebody on the
right,
phone and they say, "Well, I need to hear from them." Well, they can't. They're not capable of that. So
right,
I definitely
right.
think my father-in-law went through the same thing as your dad, and I think we grieved probably for
Mhm.
the last year, just fighting
Yeah,
those battles to get him the proper care and to make sure he was as
right.
safe as he could be given his limitations.
Right, right. I know for me, I had to take it as far up to Sacramento and get to someone up there who can get the people where I was at to do what they needed to do. It was just insane. The whole thing was just ridiculous. I was contacting a senator in my area that helps veterans, so I'm that person where I will take it up the flagpole. I'll go all the way to the top because you know for aging people who maybe don't have family around, right, that can advocate for them, they're not going to get the services that they need. So anyway, I know that's a different topic, but yeah, that and that's just so hard,
Sure.
anyway. Yeah, yeah, so
And I
there is
think
a
that's a
lot
big
here.
thing. I was when you said you had to advocate for them, I think somewhere in our minds we understand that at some point we're going to have to care for our parents. We're going to have to do more for them. But
Hmm.
I think I was kind of blindsided to the whole advocating
Yeah,
aspect of it. I knew that,
yeah.
when they stopped driving, I'd take them shopping and, we would
Hmm.
spend more time with them and things like that. But I
Hmm.
wasn't prepared to have to go through all of the nonsense trying to make appointments to get information to
Right.
find the proper care. It was a lot, as you
Yeah,
said.
yeah. Yeah, and there isn't a manual in how to do this either, which is, you're just trying to figure it
No,
out on your own, and right? It's just sometimes it feels like I was being
right.
passed around. I was,
Yes.
being passed around because no one was a "Oh, this you're not at the right department. You're not," and I remember one time with Medicare, well, first of all, my brother was handling it initially, and I got a he said, "Stacy, I can't deal with this anymore." And I said, "Fine, I'll take it over." And the gal that I was speaking with at Medicare, she says, "Your brother's not allowed to call us anymore." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And so she told me, and I said, "Well, now you're going to be dealing with me." And she was still really unpleasant. And so I just took it all the way up to their supervisor. And I said, We have email. We've not wait. We have mailed. We have faxed. We have FedExed my father's application 4 times, and you still can't find it. I need to come to the office and hand it over to someone. And the gal that I was speaking with, she goes, "You can't do that." I said, You're going to go ahead and put your supervisor on the phone." So I got the supervisor on the phone, and she said, I don't have the authority. I don't have the authorization to do." I said, "That's all right. You go ahead and pass me on over to your supervisor." And so she did. And that supervisor okayed it for me to come over to their office and hand my dad's application over. And his caseworker was really angry with me that I was allowed to do that. But that's the thing we're dealing with, right? We don't know what we don't know until we're dealing with it.
Yeah.
So again, it just makes this whole process of these losses that much more difficult. So I'd like to move into the final segment of teaching and counseling around this. And the question that I have for you is, what are some? So we've talked about all the difficulties that we can experience in midlife, but what are some, and so I don't want our listeners thinking, well, what do I do with all of that? How do I navigate through this, and what are some steps that I can take? So that's the question. What are some practical steps that women can take to navigate the multiple losses they
Right.
experience? And I remember in our conversation initially, you had said the steps or approach are the same, but the details of carrying it out are different. And I'd love for you to talk about that a bit.
Sure. The first thing that I would say is something that we are definitely not conditioned to do, and that is self-care. I
Mhm.
don't think I would have made it through the last year if I did not make self-care a priority. And that looks different to
Right.
everyone. Some things that worked
Mhm.
for me were
Mhm.
meditation of varying
Mhm.
kinds. And I'm not a stickler for rules. So meditation to me could be just sitting on the porch and listening to the birds, or it could be putting an app on
Right.
my phone and listening to a certain kind of music, or it could be a guided meditation where somebody's talking. Everybody has
Right.
different preferences, and I found I had different preferences at different times. Another thing
Mhm.
that I firmly believe in that I've been doing for almost 2 years now is qigong, similar to yoga, but it's more of a flow sessions, and I
Mhm.
really and truly believe that that kept me grounded and kept my mind at ease, even though there was so much going on around me at one time.
Mhm.
I firmly believe in deep breathing,
Mhm.
as I'm saying all this, I'm kinda giggling to myself because when I mention this to other women, they're like, "Oh, I tried that. That doesn't work." And so I always say, "Okay, well, what did you do?" And then I have them explain
Mhm.
it to me, and I said, "All right, well, then I'm gonna try it a different way." And
Mhm.
eventually, most of the time, they come around. And I think too, like we mentioned earlier, it's finding things that you enjoy. And it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be a spa day. It doesn't have to be a vacation. It can be 5 or 10 minutes
Right.
where you can just escape to somewhere, a book, music,
Yeah.
outside, something, just to calm
Mhm.
yourself down, take yourself out of the chaos for a few minutes. And as a caregiver, too, whether it's children, aging parents, spouse, whatever, it's really important to do
Mhm.
that, and it's important to have those kind of tools that you can do on the go. You
Right.
might be experiencing the chaos somewhere away from your home, away from your comfort space, and you need,
Mhm.
whether it's a deep breathing exercise or self-talk or something like that to just calm you down
Right.
in the moment. So I work on a lot
Yeah.
of different kinds of tools that will help
Mhm.
people calm down so that wherever you are and have that experience, there's something you can pull out of your toolbox and use to settle yourself.
Yeah, I like that, managing the stress in those ways, the deep breathing, maybe the positive self-talk, that meditation. I love that you don't need any special equipment. You can do it almost anywhere. Um, I also like with managing the stress, there's emotional freedom technique as well, or that's also known as tapping. That's something that seems to work well with some of the clients that I work with also. Um, Do you also work with women on their mindset because they tend to get stuck on certain beliefs?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a big part of it. And it's always a challenge to move past them. It's easy for them to
Mhm.
say, I don't want to think like this anymore. But because your brain is
Mhm.
in the habit of doing it, it
Mhm.
sneaks in and it repeats itself. So I
Right.
definitely work on mindset techniques, mindfulness techniques, even if it's something as just enjoying your morning cup of coffee and not
Right.
doing anything else. Because again, I think we're
Mhm.
pre-programmed to multitask, to do 10 things, and we can't find that time to settle.
Right.
Getting rid of those limiting beliefs is a lot of journaling, a lot of talking it out, kind
Mhm.
of playing scenarios, well, okay,
Yeah.
what if you let that go and you did decide to pursue another relationship? What does that look like? In terms of women that are widowed, often they say, well, I would feel guilty. Well, your
Mm.
spouse is not here anymore. Your spouse would want you to
Right.
be happy. So, how can we make that
Right.
happen? And so, getting rid
Right.
of that mindset that, I can't have another relationship because I'm going to be feeling guilty about that. Working through that is,
Mm.
is a challenge. And
Mhm.
the identity
Yeah.
is a mindset. Like you said, am I too
Yeah.
old?
Right.
Is it too late?
Right. 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 Yeah. I say this jokingly, but serious at the same time when people say, "Well, I'm too old," or "It may be too late." And I'm like, "Well, it's too late when you're dead." And so, we still have life ahead of us. And,
Right.
one of the things that, right? One of the things that I help my clients with is looking back and going, well, that you have a couple of options here. You can project into the future what your life would look like if you didn't move forward in going back to school or whatever it is. What would your life look like? And then what would it look like if you did? Right. And then, looking back on your
Right.
life as you're further down the road, do you want to live a life of regret? Oh, I should have done it. I could have done it, would have done it, and you didn't do any of it. And so thinking about, well, what would be worse? Trying it and not liking it, trying it and failing at it, trying it and wow, this is amazing, or not doing it at all, right? Um yeah. Yeah. One of the things that you had mentioned earlier on was helping these women rediscover themselves. What are some techniques that you use to help, the women that you do coach rediscover who they are? Once they get past the certain beliefs that they may be stuck in, do you find that it's easier then for them to rediscover who they are?
It is. And we also work a lot on getting rid of labels. When you ask someone who they are, they tend to
Mhm.
tell you what they do, not necessarily who
Right.
they are. So we
Mhm.
talk about those things that, what makes you smile, what gives you joy. If there were no limitations and you could do anything you wanted on the weekend, what would you do? And then
Mhm.
it takes some stepping out of their comfort zone. And again, because we are
Yeah.
habituated into a certain routine, anything you want to do outside of that, your brain starts, well, what if I look silly, or I don't want to take that art class because everybody's going to be better than me, that kind of stuff. And it's a challenge. I think in our generation, it's kind of just knee deep programmed in there. And we have to kind of fish it out and say, all right, so you go to the art class and you paint a terrible painting. Does anybody really care? 20 minutes
No.
after you walk out that door, is anybody going to remember that you painted a terrible painting?
Mm-mm.
And then so again, we kind of role play and go through scenarios like, okay, what if somebody looks at your painting and they laugh? Well, okay,
Mhm.
turn around and laugh back. And that was again
Mhm.
something that I struggled with. I grew up in a perfectionist household. And then as a teacher working for a high end clients and well-to-do families, I felt like I had to do everything perfect all the time. When I
Mm,
got out of teaching, I found an entire new mindset that I didn't even know was there. And all of a
mm,
sudden, I found myself saying, "Oh, I'm not a teacher anymore. I can do this. Oh, I'm not a teacher anymore. I could do that." And I thought, Why do I think that?" That it doesn't have to be.
yeah,
So it just takes some
right.
digging, finding out what you believe and what you want.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so true, and you're right, when we're, "Well, tell me a little bit about yourself," and we go into what we do rather than who we are and getting to well, I think too, the reason why we end up going into the things that we do is because that's less vulnerable, and maybe there won't be as much judgment around that or criticism
Sure.
around that if we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable and get to who we really are, and like you said, a lot, most of us, we really don't know who we are. And, we need to figure that out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So is there anything
And that's a
else that
process. That's
yeah,
another challenge. People wanna
yeah,
figure it out like tomorrow.
I know. Well, and you know what? I actually struggle with that too with my clients who are like, "Well, we've been in counseling for 6 months." And say I'm working with with couples, right? And they're like, the wife is like, "Well, we've been in counseling for 6 months and I'm not seeing any progress." And I'm going, well, like and she's talking about her husband. And I'm going, "You're not seeing any progress?" And I'm going, "Well, I can think of 3 things that he's, progressed in." And then I ask, I'll say to the wife, I'll say, "Well, consider how long he's been struggling with what he's struggling with." 6 months is not a long time to be in counseling to rewire the brain and learn new ways
Right.
of doing things, right? We have
Yeah,
that issue, especially with
100%.
women, what comes at us, yeah, so much are, "Lose 20 pounds in 10 days," and I'm going, "That's so unhealthy." I mean, it's just ridiculous,
Oh,
and so
no.
we're in that,
Right.
right? That
Yeah.
instant gratification, microwave kinda
Right.
culture that we're living in where,
Yes.
we just want everything quick and easy, and anything worth having, requires time and effort.
Absolutely. I always say it took you a while to build the lifestyle you're living. It's gonna take you a while to build the different lifestyle that you want to live.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I have a question for you, Jennifer. Thinking about some of the clients that you have worked with, what would you say would be one of the most challenging issues that you've dealt with, and how did you help your client navigate through that?
I think when you look at the stress experiencing, the challenges that are happening, one of the biggest things that keeps coming up over and over again is they don't believe in themselves. They don't have the
Mm,
confidence, and frankly, neither did I. When I left
mhm,
teaching,
mhm.
I was kind of down on myself saying, "How do I take these skills and turn them into something else?" I didn't believe that I could do that.
Yeah.
And I worked with a coach and she helped me figure it
Mhm,
out and we just go through strategies. I say baby steps probably 1,000 times a week because each
mhm.
little thing that you do that shows what you're capable of,
Mhm.
capitalizing on your past successes. A lot of people don't look back. I think we're kind
Mm.
of in this culture where it's, be present, move forward. And looking back and reflecting is really, really important because then all of a sudden these aha moments pop up and go, wow, I really did do a lot. I
Mhm.
class at the end of the year on using building success boards to then turn around and take your successes to build your vision board for 2024.
Mhm.
And
Right.
all the women that did it said, wow, I thought didn't have it, me included. I didn't think I had a great year. But when I'm looking at all these great things that I did, I had a great year.
Yeah.
And that helps build
Yeah.
the belief system. Again, the self-talk, the positive
Mhm.
affirmations,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
just really changing back to the mindset and letting people
Oh, you cut out. You cut out. Yeah, you would cut out. Yeah. Y
back again.
yes, yes. You left off at mindset. Oh, you're frozen.
Yeah, we were frozen for a second. Here I am.
Mhm. Yep, alright. Yeah. You'd left off at mindset.
Do you have me back?
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, good.
Oh,
Just rebuilding that step by step and letting people know that you can do whatever you want, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, doesn't matter. If you decide and you set some goals, then you have the capability of taking
mhm.
the actions and
Yeah,
getting them
yeah,
done.
I like that. Yeah, I agree with you that we are all about the present and moving forward, and in so much of the counseling work that I do, in order for me to help my clients move forward, I've got to take them back. Because if I don't take them back and look at, hey, what was working there? What wasn't working there? What do we need to, what do we need to address that may be holding you back from moving forward? Right, and getting healing around that, otherwise, you're just gonna carry it with you, like the mindset, the false belief systems, right? If you don't do any work around that, your future
Right.
isn't gonna look that great, and so I just say our past informs our present and future. It does. So we get to make different choices if we know, you know, if we are able to identify what wasn't working, why it wasn't working in our past, then we can make different choices, more informed choices that are healthier. And so then our future looks way different than what our past does. And also with some of the clients that I work with, they're parents. And I tell them this counseling isn't just for you. This is about legacy, and what do you want to pass on to your children and your children's children? How do you want to model health to them? So yeah, some you and I, although we work in different aspects, we do some similar work with our clients. So is there is before we end today, I'm so glad that we were able to have you on the show, sharing the great things that you did share. Is there one thing that you would like to leave, a word of wisdom or a nugget that you would like to leave our viewers and listeners?
So many. I'm going to go to my tagline because are so many underlying messages in my tagline. Um,
Uh-huh.
I live in Pennsylvania, but I also have property in Arizona, and someday that will be retirement. So my business is that's my theme. And my tagline
Mhm.
is that life will always be imperfect, but it doesn't have to be so prickly. And I
Oh, I like
think
that.
that was something I was missing. Was
Mm,
always striving for that perfect life. I was looking at
mhm.
others, I was comparing to others. And it took me a while to unlearn all that and realize it's up to me. I create the life that I want, but I also have to
Mhm.
understand that it isn't going to be perfect and that we can
Right.
be messy and imperfect and it's okay. And I think a lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize that. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be prickly. It doesn't have to be so hard. There's resources,
Right.
there's people that can help you, and there's books and there's podcasts
Right.
and there's change your thinking and get into a better headspace and make better choices. move forward and make a better life for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks, Jennifer. It was so great having you on the show. And for those of you that have been watching and listening, reach out to Jennifer. She can be reached at 610-854-9977, or you can email her at crooked barrel, Barryl, coaching at gmail.com. And make sure you reach out to her and get that free 30-minute consultation. You've got absolutely nothing to lose. I so appreciate you all being here. And I'd like to leave a word with all of you as well. As I'm a pastoral counselor, I would like to leave you with the word of God. Matthew 5:4 says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And Romans 8:28a says, "Furthermore, we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called in accordance with his purpose." Thank you so much for watching and listening, and may the Lord bless you. You have been listening to True You Ministries with pastoral counselor Stacy Echeverria. Stacy is a licensed pastoral counselor whose own journey has taught her the importance of having a safe place to discuss the harder issues of life. You can learn more about Stacy and her heartfelt desire to help people, much like yourself, who may be at a place of pain and confusion by calling her at 626-461-3344, or feel free to email her at info@trueyouministries.com. Thank you for tuning in today, and we'll be back next week at the same time. May God richly bless you.